Good evening and welcome to the February 2nd Findlay Council meeting, regular session. We will start with the roll call.
Mr. Greeno.
Here.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Mr. Hellman.
Here.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Russell.
Here.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Here.
Mr. Slough.
Here.
Ms. Warnicki.
Here.
And Mr. Wolfser.
Present.
I will entertain a motion to accept the previous City Council meeting minutes. Mr. Slough.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Niemeyer. Any discussion? Mr. Hellman, that's your key. That's your cue. Mr. Hellman.
Yes, there are a few modifications, I guess, or corrections that I was going to suggest. Hang on, I gotta see what I did with that paper.
Would you like me to read your proposed?
I was very organized until you called me.
I'm sorry.
You said you had it there highlighted, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and read it?
So,
I'll see
under
if
the mobile health clinic discussion by Mayor Murin, the minutes state that Councilman Hellman supports this initiative as he, and we struck out is, and added has been, a Rotarian for many years and has served on the board. We struck out who has and added and have gone through many, struck out interactions and added iterations on how to get this accomplished. We also made a correction that it said it was Dr. Coase and it was Dr. Roos. And then in the second paragraph, the mayor explained why the Rotary, and then we struck was the organization that want this, and put in supports it, and also corrected Dr. Rose to Roos. Does everybody understand those changes? It's a little bit of semantics and then changing that it was Dr. Roos.
I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
So are you making a motion to amend as discussed?
I will. So moved.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any other discussion on, oh, I'm sorry, there's no discussion on amendment. Yeah. Everybody, all those in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. The minutes are approved. Thank you. Sorry, I had a little bit of a moment there. Yes, Mr. Russell.
May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence?
Yeah, that was my next thing here.
Thank you.
So at this time, I'd like everybody to stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to make a personal note on that is not part of our agenda. It's been something that we've always done in the past, and I did propose at some point in time, if the Rules Committee does meet at some point in time, that we add that to the agenda. So when I'm going down, I don't accidentally admit that. So, okay. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-on replacements or removals from tonight's agenda?
Yes, we do. Some changes to the agenda. We are going to actually title the agenda as being on February 2 instead of February 19th as it is on the first page. A change to the title for legislation of Ordinance 2021-011 and some minor changes to the language of Ordinance 2021-013. Also, Ordinance 2021-013, the rezone also has a minor change to the language, and I would move that those changes be made to the agenda.
Second, Mr. Wolfser. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adding and making those changes and additions, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. They are added and removed and replaced. We have no proclamations, we have no recognition or retirement resolutions. We do have one oral communication. The health director, Dr. Kareem Marudi, would like to speak and give council the update on the coronavirus pandemic. I'm trying to read your writing there.
I'm sorry.
It's a doctor's handwriting.
And, something campaign,
And the vaccination campaign.
vaccination campaign.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much for the time here. We'll make it quick, less than 4 minutes. The bad news is today is Groundhog Day, and we still have 6 more weeks of winter, I guess. The good news is that our infection rate for the coronavirus is going down. And I think since last time I was in front of you, we were in the middle of a probably surge. Now, I did print the 7-day curve for all of you, and it's pointing down. It's downtrending, which is really good news. The really message we want to convey to all your constituents that they've asked you about the infections and is it getting better? It's getting better, but by no means we are in a safe place yet. So please urge everybody, all your constituents, everybody that reached out to you, to make sure they keep their mask on, they keep their distance, their hand hygiene, don't get into congregations. This is very important because I think those measures, coupled with the vaccination efforts we're doing here in town, I think that's our hope out of this pandemic. We're averaging about 15 to 20 cases a day now. That's a lot better than the 160 cases we were at in the middle of December, but we're doing a lot better, and we want to keep it that way. On the flip side of that page, or handout, I put a little dashboard of our vaccination here in Hancock County. You've heard a lot about the limited supply of the vaccine, and I think under the leadership of Mayor Mern here, we've been lobbying the state hard to get us as many vaccine as they can, because we are standing ready with our partners at the hospitals to make sure every vaccine we get in town, it's put into arms right away. So our goal is we get the vaccine on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. By Friday, all those vaccines will go into arms. And with those efforts the last 5 weeks, we've vaccinated a little over 5,300 individuals. We're following closely what the governor wants as far as the phased approach. Based on the data that on that graph on the bottom of the page, it will only make sense since most of our infections are in the 80 and above, 70 and above, to start with that most vulnerable group. And if we can get them immunized and immune to the things, we're hoping that this is going to help our numbers and our infections, and moving forward, we can make progress faster. We vaccinated about 60% of the 80 and above population in Hancock County, and that effort is going really well. We're doing mass vaccination clinics, 500 plus people coming to the hospital, where the hospital staff and public health staff are working hand in hand. We have one central registry kept at the health department where people were able to go and register. I'm probably going to be asked about that a lot by your constituents as well. They will go online. It's very simple, few questions, and they will be put on a list. That list we look at every morning before starting scheduling anything, and we put 2 filters on it. The first filter is the age filter. The 80 and above will be moved all the way up to the top of the list. Then another filter on that group we put is 80 and above with existing conditions. Those will be moved to that top list as well. Then our staff will start calling and scheduling those appointments to make sure every vaccine dose is being put in arms by the end of the week, like I said. Now our message, the mayor's message to the governor is as much vaccine as you can roll into town here, we'll put it into arms and we'll make it happen. So hopefully this is going to ease up a little bit here moving into March, so we can immunize our population as soon as possible. As far as people wanted the vaccine, I think our registry is working now with about 10,000 individuals registered to receive the vaccine. And that's not everybody, that's phase 1A and 1B for the governor's phases. as we move through it now, the next phase that we're between 70 and 80 years old, that's about 2,300 people on that list. So it's gonna take us a while to get through with everybody, especially with the 500-600 doses we're getting a week. But we're working hard to make sure this happens and our citizens are protected. That's my quick update. And since we're talking about the mobile health clinic a little bit, I'm sure you all read the paper on how that tool can really, the paper that talks about the ONU and how their pharmacists are rolling up their sleeves to get the vaccinations through that mobile. I think reviving that mobile health clinic and idea is a great one, especially right now, because there's going to be a need for it. Once the weather breaks a little bit, once more vaccines rolls into town, we're going to have a lot of people wanted the vaccine and want to make sure we get it quick and a safe manner. That mobile can go to places, it can reach out to people, and beyond the pandemic, any of the services we have at the health department can be put on that mobile and taken out to our citizens. I think if we make public health convenient, everybody will be healthy. That's what we believe in. So, I know I'm beyond the 4 minutes.
No, that's fine. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Russell?
So of the stats on the vaccinations, is that one shot or two?
This is the one shot. There's another dashboard that talks about completed vaccination. If you notice, this is vaccine started. So that's the first shot.
Okay, so then the expectation, if we're getting let's say a constant string of 500 a week, is that if these numbers are gonna stay pretty static coming up as we start getting into our second shots?
No, this is a great question. I think what the state of Ohio's done, and not all the, every state's done the same thing. Once they were receiving the vaccine, they will send 500 to Findlay. Then they will say, we're gonna keep 500 for the second doses. Then they will send them again in 3 weeks. So those are new vaccines. All the second doses are accounted for. They're not here in town. We cannot give them as first doses. They will come from the state and they will be earmarked for second dose.
And then do you have do you track your vaccinations by where the person is from? In other words, are they from are the majority of them from Findlay? Are they coming in from Macomb, from the townships? And obviously, this question goes a little bit towards we're having success with the vaccinations, and it kind of goes towards the mobile health clinic. I wondered how many people are coming in from the outside of the Findlay City proper and are getting vaccinated.
Well, we all know the demographic shifts here. People from the county are moving into the city, or they come to the city to work, and everything else. Probably the census that's going to come up here quick or soon will tell us more about the population change or the migration into the city or out of the city. But nonetheless, most of those vaccines were done in Findlay, and we can break down that data to the census tract level, and we'll be more than happy to do that.
They're done in Findlay, but are people from Macomb coming in? Are people from Mount Blanchard coming into Findlay to get, and I don't think a lot of these 80-year-olds are coming into work there, but are they making the trip to come into Findlay to get a vaccine?
Most of them are Findlay residents, but I can get the census tract data down to the level.
It's really a curiosity off the top of your head if that's something that you track, because it goes to the discussion point that the mobile health clinic will enable us to drive the 10-15 miles out to Macomb and make it that much more convenient. And I just wonder if I'm driving my mom across Cleveland from the west side to the east side to get her shot, and I would think that an 80-year-old who has a shot 15 miles away will find some way to get into Findlay, down to the hospital or the health wherever, and get the shot. They're not going to sit around and wait for the mobile health clinic to make its one-time round to Macomb, for example.
And that's a great point, Councilman Russell. One point about the mobile health clinic, even in town in Findlay, we are taking the vaccine and moving it. So we're going to the rec center, we're going to the 50 North, we're going to the hospital. So we're packing up. You know, our nurses are packing up every morning, so they start really early for a clinic that's starting at 7:30 to pack up everything. What we think about that mobile, it will be the base for all those clinics around Findlay. Even if we go to the rec center, we go to the different businesses, you know, and start vaccination there. We go to the warehouses we have. We go to the churches. We go where people go. That's the value of the mobile. You know, buying a great health department building here on Keith Parkway that we fought for more than 5 years. And for those of you who really were involved in the merger, if we stayed where we at before, you know, last year or the year before, we couldn't have responded to this pandemic. Believe me, we need the tools, and that mobile is going to be one of the tools. Again, we want to make health convenient. We want to make, you know, we'll come in here one day and all the city of Findlay workers will go for screenings. That will give you the city discount on their insurance. Same with all the businesses, same with all the government, same with the county. We have to invest in public health. And if the expectation of the people for public health to stand up and respond, you have to give us the tools. And for the longest time, not only in Findlay, but nationwide, public health has been underfunded until we need public health now. And you know, we were able to patch things up this whole year, but we're gonna need some help here. And I really, really appreciate that you guys believe in public health. We have a mayor here that greatly believes in public health, and I'm not just saying that, but you can tell. She goes and lobby for public health across the state and across the nation. So thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Mayor?
Councilman Palmer can go first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Palmer.
Yeah, Dr. Baruti, how does our vaccination rate compare to the surrounding counties and to the state average?
The state average is about 7% now, so pretty comparable. We are on par with one of our largest counties to the north, you know, Wood County, and they have a lot more resources. Same with Lucas County. We're doing a lot better than Seneca. We're doing a lot better than Hardin. We're doing a lot better than Wyandotte. We're doing a lot better than a lot of the counties our size. Huron County, usually I compare myself to Huron County a lot. It's about the same size, same makeup. We're doing a lot better than those.
Any other questions?
Yep.
Councilman Warnicki?
Do the numbers that you're giving us, is that just the health department? Because I hear that they're giving vaccines at CVS and Walgreens here. Are you counting those?
That's all the numbers. But most of the vaccine coming in town is coming to the health department and the hospital. So again, between the health department and the hospital, 500, 600, 700, 800 in the beginning of their rollout, those were coming from the effort of the health department and the hospital. Walgreens and such, they just started this week. They're starting really soft. That's the leftovers vaccine they have from vaccinating in long-term care. And I think the state allowed them to just take the leftovers into their stores and offer them that way. But this is very minimal effort compared to what we're doing at the health department. But that's countywide. That's every shot is done. That's done in the county.
Mayor Muir?
Sneak up behind you here. So I just real quick wanted to touch on this. As Karine mentioned, we've really been trying to have a centralized scheduling system. We plan to continue that throughout the different phases. Hopefully you all saw the letter that I sent to our business entities. One of the things we're trying to do is, at this point, we still do not know what the future phases look like. We're really pushing the state to give us some guidance on that so that we can start working with our business partners and other entities and citizens in general to start getting people signed up for those other phases so we know what our numbers look like. As Kareem mentioned, I've really been trying to push the state to say, tell us what the phases are, let us figure out how to execute it locally, let us figure out what our numbers are, and then as we get them, we can kind of tell you. If I know that I only need 40,000 vaccines to get our entire county vaccinated, and we can get organized and get those distributed in, 4 weeks, I think that that's valuable information. So we've really been trying to push on that, and we'll continue to watch it. And as Councilwoman Warnicki mentioned, there are a couple of those retail pharmacies We're having weekly conversations with them to try to, again, keep them using the centralized system as much as possible. We're working with the state to, again, have them work through our system so that we don't have folks signing up in one place and then getting an appointment elsewhere. We are one of the only counties that I'm aware of in the state that is using that centralized system. I would say we're much more organized, much to Kareem and his team's credit, and the hospital. They can push through 400 vaccines a day at the hospital very easily. So I guess my message is that I want to share with you all is that we are very well positioned to get this out safely and effectively, and we're just continuing to kind of hold tight as we find out how many we're going to get each week. We find out, as Kareem mentioned, typically on Tuesday, what then the following week's allocation is going to be, and we have a call to talk through that. What does the scheduling look like, and continue to push that out. As I mentioned at the last council meeting, HancockPH.com is where folks can register for those appointments, and then BVHS Vaccine Connect is a website that the hospital has set up for their service region that has a variety of FAQs, resources, and connection to a number of their websites. And I would love to comment more on the mobile health unit, but I'll hold tight until later in the conversation. Though if you guys have questions, I wouldn't be upset if we gave Kareem all of the questions now so he could go home and sleep, since I know his days start really early these days.
Any other questions for Kareem or the mayor? Mr. Russell.
So, Kareem, for the pharmacies that are the CVS's and Walgreens or whatever that are given, are they following the same phases that the governor has laid out, or is that being done on a whoever they contact basis?
They have to follow the phases, so they are going by age group. Our only concern, and in talking to the pharmacists for the last couple of weeks since they started getting the vaccines, and the mayor's on those calls as well, is them not pulling from the central registry that we have. That registry started probably a month before the actual vaccine rolled out. And we wanted to be fair to our citizens by going through that list. And I think that's the contention was with the pharmacies. They have their own registration system, and they're pushing that. Luckily enough, they're not getting a lot of doses, and they're not disrupting that order too much. But since we had our citizens invest in going and registering in one registry, we would have liked for the pharmacy to pull, as they are scheduling vaccines, out of that list. Up until today, we were not successful for them to pull from that yet, but that's what we're hoping for.
So then you're cross-checking the folks on the list to ensure that they haven't already received a vaccine?
Yes, that is correct. Every time we pull the list to start calling people and scheduling, they will let us know if they got their vaccine somewhere else, or if they are scheduled to get at one of the pharmacies.
Any other questions? Thank you. Oh,
I was just going to comment on that. As Kareem mentioned, we have been in conversations with our local pharmacists, and they've been overall supportive. It's really been the corporate entities that have been saying, no, you can't use that central registration. So we are working with the state to kind of advocate for, again, continuing to use that system. But we are checking it. And again, it's very minimal. I think it's like 50 vaccines that these retail pharmacies are getting each week. So very small populations.
Out of curiosity, is that a HIPAA concern that prevents the sharing of the information?
No.
okay, thank you. And I think patience is probably the key word to the COVID vaccine. Petitions.
A zoning amendment request for 610 South Blanchard Street from Sean Farmer, who would like to change the zoning to R4 duplex triplex high density. It's currently zoned C1 local commercial district.
Questions or comments? This will be referred to the City Planning Commission and P&Z Committee.
Status of the Amber Ways development annexation on East Bigelow Avenue. On November 23rd, 2020, the annexation documents have been in the city clerk's office for the required 60 days. So now it's ready for legislation.
Questions or comments? Hearing none. On to written communications. We have none. Reports of municipal officers and departments.
Treasurer's reconciliation report for December 31st, 2020.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Summary financial reports as of December 31st, 2020.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
A letter from Mayor Murm regarding the city-county emergency management services agreement.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Murm regarding the fourth quarter 2020 KPIs.
Questions or comments? The KPI and letter will be filed.
City Planning Commission agenda for February 11th, 2021.
Questions or comments? Agenda be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Thomas regarding first capital improvements appropriation.
Questions or comments? Mr. Stashak.
Thank you. In doing my due diligence, would like to share a thought with this body with regard to one of the items you're going to consider. We do the capital, we normally do it very quickly. There's some advantageous reasons for that in terms of pricing and what we get. But there is one item here I want to bring to your attention with regard to two $200,000 appropriations, one from water and one from sewer. And you all know my comments and the thoughts I had previously with regard to that, which have not changed. However, I'm not here to rehash that. I'm here to talk about this from a different aspect that affects two of your committees, appropriations and water and sewer, plus a thought for the rest of the body here for future appropriations and how you consider things in regard to our process. So it's an administrative process question here. And what I'd like to share here is, we all know that you appropriated $500,000 to this project several months ago, months ago. We have not spent $1 of that $500,000 that we appropriated. So nothing has been spent. We basically rolled the 2020 expenses into 2021, which is, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but that's effectively what's happening here. And now we've got a request to roll into that $500,000 that hasn't been spent another $400,000. Again, presenting for consideration of this body, not arguing one way or the other. At this point, I believe that that's a discussion you need to be prepared, and I wanted to give both the administration and this body time to prepare for that before the Council Appropriations Committee meeting to consider the capital, because I think it's an important question. And as you recall, the meters have never been bid. In other words, we've never gone out and put even that brand meter to bid to know that we're getting the best pricing that we can. So I have my two recommendations that I would make for that body, and again, so that no one feels they are blindsided at that committee meeting or in a council meeting when we get to the third reading, is that since you have $500,000 that we haven't spent $1 of, and to boot, we do not have a standing contract in place with that, at least none that my office has signed, we have not progressed to the point where that, in my opinion, it would be prudent to obligate more money until we've spent some of the money that's there. So I share for this body and the consideration of all at your meeting that that is a question that may be worth discussing in further detail, should you choose to do so. It's my opinion you should, and I hope you do. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If not, I'll go back to the meeting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Thomas regarding ODOT fiscal year 21 resurfacing project number 328014000.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell.
Brian, the ODOT resurfacing, that's generally something we like to get started quickly, is that correct?
Yes, with that money that we get every year, we have a set amount of time that we have to have the contractor under contract. With ODOT being involved, that kind of narrows our window because they're involved with it too. So most of the time, every year since I've been here, I have asked that you consider approving that early because we need to get it done early so that we can get it back contract signed to get it back to ODOT, so that we can secure the funding. And, you know, I tried to put in my letter here that, you know, we tried to bid that one and the other resurfacing early when we know that asphalt contractors are looking for work and they're trying to fill their schedule. We got really good pricing, in my opinion, this year. So we're trying to move up and trying to get our other resurfacing work out as soon as we can, to try to take advantage of that. Now that some of the contractors know what each other is bidding, maybe we can even get some better numbers on those. We'll see how it goes. But yes, I am asking if you'd all consider approving that tonight so that I can get that into contract.
And specifically, where are we sort of focused on this year with the ODOT project?
This year is Bright Road, from 568 all the way up to Tiffin Avenue. We thought previously that we were gonna have to break that up into 2 phases because we thought we were gonna need to do more concrete work in the curbs. But when we were actually out there measuring it up, the concrete was in better shape than what we anticipated. So more asphalt work, less concrete work is better, so we can get that all done in one phase.
Any other questions
All
or
that crack
comments?
seal that's out there will go away.
Any other questions or comments? Letter to be filed. Committee reports, we have none. Legislation.
Third reading for Resolution 2-2021, a resolution requesting the county auditor to make tax advances during the year 2021 pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 321.34.
Mr. Slough.
I have moved for adoption of resolution 2-2021.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the resolution 002-2021, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted.
First reading for Resolution 5-2021, a resolution approving the expenditures made by the Auditor's Office on the attached list of vouchers which either exceed the purchase order or were incurred without a purchase order, exceeding the statutory limit of $3,000, all in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D.
Mr. Slough.
Move for adoption of resolution 5-2021.
Hold on, was that the second reading or was that the
This is
first
the
reading? After you
First
said-
reading.
First reading, and
Because
it
the
only
agenda says
requires
second
one
reading.
reading.
I'm sorry.
reading.
One
reading?
Resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, sorry.
I read the wrong one.
Okay, we have a motion. Second, Mr. Wobser. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of resolution 005-2021, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Ordinances. Wait, is there an add-on? We forgot the add-ons. Okay. Ordinances.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-5, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Okay.
First reading for ordinance 2021-6, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and the director of public safety of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into a contract with Hancock County Emergency Management Agency to develop an emergency operation plan that would encompass all political subdivisions of Hancock County, pursue a professional development training program, and coordinate the emergency management activities of all the political subdivisions according to the duties and requirements of section 5502.27 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Because this is a pretty non-controversial continuation of something we've had in place for a long time, I would move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2021-006 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of suspending the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended. The clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2021-6, ordinance 2021-6.
Mr. Wobser,
Make a motion to approve.
second Mr. Palmer. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if their name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
And Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted. Or approved.
First reading for ordinance 2021-7. An ordinance authorizing the service director and the safety director of the city of Findlay, Ohio to advertise for bids where required and enter into a contract or contracts for construction of various projects in accordance with the 2021 department equipment list, appropriating and transferring funds for said capital expenditures, and declaring an emergency.
Next.
First reading for ordinance 2021-8. An ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell,
For the reasons stated by Brian, I would move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2021-008 be given its second and third reading.
second Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2021-8. Ordinance 2021-8.
Mr. Greeno,
I'll move for adoption of ordinance 2021-008.
second Mr. Schindeldecker. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if their name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2021-9, an ordinance authorizing the establishment of the Findlay designated outdoor refreshment area, making certain findings and determinations, and enacting regulations to that effect.
Mr. Haas.
Would the mayor be able to explain this just a little bit?
I think we could bring that up under new or old business. I mean, unless you're going to make a motion at this point in time to approve. I mean, right now you'd have to suspend the rules. If we're going to talk about it, trust me.
Point of order, he's allowed to ask questions about it,
Sure.
just we just can't discuss, isn't it?
Okay. Well,
Well, if we're gonna bring it up later.
discussion is discussion. Under the ordinance, are we discussing the project or the ordinance? There's my question.
I can address it at the end.
Okay, go ahead.
First reading for ordinance 2021-10, an ordinance authorizing the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Hancock County Commissioners. A copy of said memorandum of understanding is attached hereto and incorporated herein as Exhibit A.
Okay, next.
First reading for ordinance 2021-11, an ordinance authorizing the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into an agreement with Rainick Ltd., whereby Rainick Ltd. Shall donate all of its rights, title, and interest in and to said property as set forth herein and attached hereto as Exhibit A.
Okay, next.
First reading for ordinance 2021-12, an ordinance accepting and approving an application for annexation of territory situated in the Township of Marion, County of Hancock, State of Ohio, and being a part of Section 6 South, Township 1 North, Range 11 East, a tract of land consisting of 8.584 acres of land, more or less, hereinafter referred to as the Amber Ways Development Annexation.
Okay, next.
First reading for ordinance 2021-13, an ordinance amending chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by zoning the following described property as I-1 Light Industrial, hereinafter referred to as the Amber Ways Development Annexation. First reading for ordinance 2021-14, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
see. Old business. New business, Mr. Haas.
Yes, I just wondered if the mayor could briefly explain how this door is going, what the regulations are.
Well, certainly. Thank you for the questions. And I know that a couple of items I wanted to mention. First, the application with the adjustments that had been discussed in the ad hoc committee will be available on our website at findlayohio.com, most likely starting tomorrow, as well as it will then subsequently be available for citizen review. Also in my office with the city clerk and the council clerk, which is on the 3rd floor of the council building. Additionally, I do plan to have a public meeting, virtual public meeting, tentatively scheduled for February 8th, and further meeting information will be released in the next week. In short, what a designated outdoor refreshment area is an area designated by City Council in which the standard open container laws do not apply. The only time it does not apply is if an individual has a designated cup, which they would have to purchase and then subsequently dispose of prior to entering any other business that has a liquor license within the designated area. I want to be very clear, it does not negate any of the public intoxication laws, littering, any other laws. All it says is that you are able to walk from one establishment to another within the designated area with an open container. This is something that's been brought up a number of times over probably the last 5-6 years, and certainly picked up steam over the last year as our businesses, especially in the downtown area, were asking for additional flexibility in being able to support their downtown businesses. It really just allows, so a couple of examples that I have used to explain when this would be useful. Say we're having art walk. Businesses would have the ability to have a sticker on their doors saying that someone with an open container is welcome, or no, there are not. And then folks would be able to, walk into a gallery or a store after they've gotten their drink. They would not be able to, again, walk into another establishment with a liquor license with the open container. Additionally, one of the reasons that it's been brought up related to COVID is obviously there are capacity limitations on our businesses. And so if someone doesn't have a reservation and they go in and there's a wait, if they would like to get a drink and then subsequently stand outside so people are not crowded in their entryway, they're able to do so. So this is something that before bringing up, even for consideration, I spoke at length with a number of other communities who have this, as well as the police chief and a couple of our police officers, and all of them were supportive. This is something where we have specifically written in the application that if we start seeing issues, council can dissolve it at any point in time. And so I think it's going to be beneficial. It's not going to turn Main Street into Bourbon Street. It's going to provide our businesses additional flexibility, encourage a more laid-back atmosphere in downtown, gives businesses options, but it's not going to cause any significant issues. And if we do start seeing issues, we can address them at that time. Additionally, I know I've received a couple of questions related to the boundaries. At this time, we've gone with the Downtown Findlay Improvement District boundaries. One reason being because we already have a company that works to clean up and sanitize the downtown district, making sure there's not litter. And that's part of the application, is providing to the state what is your sanitation plan. Additionally, one of my concerns was related to folks crossing railroad tracks. I'm not a big fan of pedestrians crossing railroad tracks. And so that was also part of the discussion. But in short, it's really just allowing our businesses more flexibility, and if we see issues down the road, we can address those.
Mr. Russell.
A couple of the neighboring communities that have doors in place, Tiffin has one, I believe Bowling Green, Defiance. You can go on the websites and their websites and see how they talk about them. But in hearing conversations, especially from Tiffin, they just haven't. They saw no problems with it. It wasn't like it turned it into like Bourbon Street or a big party atmosphere. That just didn't happen. And I think the effects for the businesses are it's marginal, but it's still 10% more sales or 5% more sales is still more sales for a part of our business community that's really been having a tough time in the last year or so.
Mr. Slough.
Mayor, will we have to purchase more trash receptacles or containers for people throwing their glasses away? Hopefully they throw them away in it.
Yeah, so the question, I'm not sure if your microphone was on, you were a little quiet. But no, I would not anticipate needing to purchase any additional trash receptacles. I would expect some of the businesses may have them right outside or right inside their door for businesses to dispose of. We did look at even, getting reusable cups or biodegradable cups. As I was talking to other communities, they said it really just doesn't work out. Logistically, it becomes a challenge. Making sure people aren't just reusing them all the time becomes a sanitation issue. But I would not expect it to be in a substantial volume where we would need to have additional trash receptacles. You made me think of something else, but now I can't remember what it was, so it must not have been that important.
Thank you.
Mr. Greeno.
Yes, Mayor. I think I understand that within the first 6 months or so, you will be reviewing this with the police department. Is that a correct statement?
Certainly, we will be happy to give more regular reports specific to the downtown area. Obviously, any crime or incidents that we see, we report on. But again, it does not negate any of the public intoxication rules. So if we start seeing people showing up and they have the Dora cups and they're not following the law, they're going to have the same punishments as if they do right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Haas.
Yes, just for the record, I just wanted this brought up so we could get an explanation as to how this will work and everything else for the public. I've had a lot of questions that people have asked me, and I thought this was the best way to get those answers.
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you, Councilman.
Any other questions concerning the Dora project? Mr. Wilson.
Who gets to be the official Dora Cup vendor?
You know what? The Convention and Visitors Bureau has offered to purchase those. That will be up to them on who the specific vendor is. But if anybody has any great logo designs, send them my way, assuming it's approved. We'll be looking to do that. Additionally, so the two items that will be an expense to get it set up are the cups as well as signage. And the Convention and Visitors Bureau has volunteered to help with those expenses, though they will be minimal. Additionally, there most likely will be a small fee at establishments, a couple of cents to cover the cost of the cup. Again, it's been very minimal and overall worth the cost.
So ultimately, the business is paying for the cups.
They will most likely charge the patrons.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Yeah. So if you say, you're finishing dinner, you're running a little late, and you need to get over to the Marathon Center for Performing Arts for your show, you want to take your drink with you, I would like to have a Dora cup so I can walk down the street with this, that's fine, we'll give that to you, and it's going to be 10 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess I do have additional items if you want me to.
All right, let me see if council has any yet. We'll let you, any other new business from council? Mr. Russell.
Planning and zoning meeting on February 10th at noon. I'll talk to the P&Z committee to see if we want to do this in person or not. I will be out of state, so I will either call in and run the meeting, or we'll do it all over Zoom. But we'll get that information out prior to the meeting, obviously. So February 10th at noon for planning and zoning.
Mr. Wobser.
Grant, is that the Wednesday the 10th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just had a question over here. I want to make sure we have the date right.
Wait, is it? No. When is planning?
It would be the 9th.
It would be Thursday.
Wednesday.
Thursday the 11th?
Normally it's second
Yeah.
Tuesday.
February 10th is a Wednesday.
When is planning and city planning?
Thursday.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The 11th.
Thank you, sir.
There.
Yeah, Kiwanis is at noon on Wednesday. What am I thinking? How about, let's change that to Thursday, February 11th at noon. Still, Zoom or in person, we're not sure.
All in favor of amending the. All right. Mr. Greeno.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is new or old business, but it's concerning the mobile health clinic. So is this the appropriate time to
No, you
comment?
bring it up now when
Okay.
we discuss them.
I just know that there have been some comments made, and I don't know if we've gone any farther with this. Has the county ever come back with any type of donation that they're willing to give to this unit?
So I know it was discussed a little bit today at their meeting, as well as they're having a meeting with the Township Trustees Association tomorrow. I know Commissioner Pepple is in attendance today, so Commissioner Pepple, I don't know if you'd like to come forward and comment any further. I think, in short, they were hoping to kind of get additional feedback from this group on what direction, as well as have some additional conversations with Commissioner Baruti. Again, just going through the process of making sure everybody's on the same page and the overall community benefit before they committed dollars. Would that be an accurate representation?
That's a good summation.
Yeah. So no, they have not made a commitment. I think they're still exploring it, and that's one of the reasons I've had Commissioner Baruti come tonight, is so that we can have a little bit further discussion on this topic.
Thank you, and I do appreciate his comments. That has cleared up several things too, so I do appreciate that.
Mr. Russell.
So kind of a question for the mayor and Kareem. We have KPIs for the city, and I appreciate that. How would you envision KPIs for a mobile health clinic? How do you measure its success? Because I think understanding how you would develop KPIs for it and measure the success would help me understand the need and why it is worth city funding.
Kareem, do you want to speak on that first?
Sure.
And we do have KPIs for a lot of the programs we have, in the building as well. We struggled a lot when we were talking about that at Rotary and every other place in the last couple of years. How do you prove a negative here? We never had a mobile. We never tried it. How do you kind of try to prove a need for it? I think we went back to our health assessment. That's our best data we have collected, every 3 years, and it will give us the status of our population here, the health population. And in our health assessment, we did talk a lot about chronic disease, and how about 40%, 60% of population are suffering from that. And how do we make them to get into healthy habits, and all the screenings and pre-screening for diabetics and everything else. So the need is there, and as far as KPIs and how do we measure success, it will be by how many visits we have to the clinics, how many communities we reach, how many vaccination we put in the beginning here. If our output at the hospital and the health department is 500 a day, can we replicate 100 or a couple hundred on a mobile health clinic, going somewhere else and setting up. And I think what we're gonna do part of the project is we want to put some goals for the clinic. What are we trying to achieve? And it will all come together in the next assessment, saying, okay, we improved on our blood pressure here for the population by 2%. We improved on immunization at schools by 5%. All those measures will be done, and it will be reported on not only to council but to the community as well.
Mr. Palmer.
Dr. Baruti, before you go, can you explain some of the benefits that Ada has seen with their mobile health clinic and how that may translate to our community?
Yes, and I think a lot of the measures that Councilman Russell talked about, we're replicating from Ada, how many visits, how many touches we've done at a fair, a county fair, or a festival, or at church, or at the certain organizations. That it's been very successful. Theirs is run a little different than ours because it's run by students and it's not full-time. I think our proposal is to go full-time and hire a nurse or 2 nurses to be on board, and they will be the coordination of the schedule. So they'll be in charge of scheduling that clinic to go out every day. I don't want to buy a bus to park it in front of public health here. We want that bus to go out and make a difference. And I think we're following a little bit of the success of the Ada because they, but it's kind of a different project.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
This discussion we've been having
Makes me think of a ninth grade dance at junior high school, and a boy trying to screw up the courage to walk across the gym floor and ask that cute little blonde who's in his English class to dance. We seem to be inclined to want to support this, and I get the impression that the commissioners are probably thinking along the same lines. How do we get off the ground and get a commitment from both of these entities to go ahead with this, or turn it down one way or the other? It seems like we need to get moving on this.
Well, you know, I think that it's great for us to go through the process, and I'm glad to hear of your enthusiasm. I think that, you know, Commissioner Baruti and I are both supportive of moving forward at whatever pace council is comfortable with. What I also think we would both feel is that it's important that the community as a whole believes this to be important and is supportive of it. And so I don't think we want to rush it. We want to make sure that we have the appropriate conversations, get the appropriate information out there, and then are able to take action. With that said, this is obviously a time-sensitive issue because there's a significant amount of lead time in getting, once it's purchased, to get it retrofitted before it can become active. So I think, you know, I really go back to the items I shared in my prior letter. I think this provides broad community benefit. This was something that was really, has been worked on for a number of years prior to the pandemic, and the reason that it's really like, hey, let's take action on this now, and the reason that the city is really getting involved is because it's more time sensitive, it's more imperative than we've really seen historically. And I want to reiterate the fact that when we talk about the $700,000 number that I put in my letter to you all, that is for purchase of the equipment, retrofit, and 2 years of operation at 35 hours per week, so that full-time threshold. After that point, Kareem and I have had a number of conversations where he said at that point, we believe that we can fund it through outside sources moving forward, and it will not be a burden to the community. And that was obviously an important question to me, understanding that we fund the health department, and I didn't want to see it just added to our bill, in essence. And so Kareem is the public health expert for our community. He has come in and studied the data, he's done the research, and he's put this forward as a valuable tool for them to be able to have a meaningful impact in our community with public health. And so I've poked and prodded him, and I'm a numbers person, so I asked him for the pro forma, and I asked him what the numbers are going to look like, and how do you manage this, and what do the operations look like. And at the end of the day, I trust him to make the right decision, because if not, I'm going to be like, Kareem, really? You left me hanging here, man. And so I think that that's kind of where we are in wanting to bring it forward to you all, and I would hope that after 2 or 3 readings, whatever council is comfortable with, you all would affirm our commitment in seeing this as a benefit to the county as a whole, and that would then in turn kind of make the dominoes fall with some other entities feeling comfortable with providing financial support as well.
Mr. Slough.
This question is for the law director.
Turn.
Don, what would be the city's liability for a purchase like this and the operation?
Well, I'm assuming it'd be shared liability, but there would be liability. You'd have to insure it in some way.
So the way that the program is currently structured is this would be a contribution, almost a donation to public health. They would be the full entity responsible for
They mean
public health. Hancock Public Health is the full entity. We are just providing financial support. So it would fall under their entity for liability. As part of that, the funding breakdown, I think it's like $235,000 a year for operational expenses. Insurance, malpractice, all of those expenses are included in that. Okay. Personnel, everything.
Okay.
Mr. Hillman.
Do you have an idea of what the cost for maintenance for this would be on just an approximation on a yearly basis?
They do have a line item built into it. Vehicle maintenance, they have $2,500 per year. So mobile health clinic cost breakdown. So they have definitely put a lot of thought and benefit into it. You know, insurance, salaries, fringe benefits, everything has been included in that cost that was shared with you all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Hellman.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of things. As I've mentioned early on, that I think I see the need for this, and I am a supporter and would encourage the rest of council to support this as well. At the last meeting, we talked a little bit about having an ad hoc committee meeting to discuss this in detail, or a committee of the whole meeting. And I guess it's a question maybe to the other council members. Do you still feel that that's necessary, or is having Kareem here this evening and the mayor explaining some of this, or is that good enough? And are our questions been answered?
Mr. Russell.
I mean, personally, I with the interest of this in the community, I like having this done when we have the most viewers and it's being recorded by YouTube so it can be played back. I appreciate the open forum versus a committee of the whole meeting, which is, you know, not even watched by my wife. So I appreciate the conversations we're having, the questions that are being asked, and rather would just continue to discuss it in regular session.
And then as a follow-up, regarding the financing, I know there are, Mayor or Kareem, what, half a dozen players, 6, 8, 10 different entities that are helping finance this. Is that in place to the tune of where you're comfortable with it? And I think what we were gonna, I think the entity was trying to raise, what was it, $750,000, I think was the total cost, if I remember right. Is that falling into place?
Overall, as I've talked with different entities and we had kind of a group call to talk through it, there are a number of entities that are stepping up to the plate to fund it at a level that I'm comfortable putting city dollars towards it. So I would say yes, there are probably a handful of entities that are already committed. Rotary has put funds towards it last year. They're putting funds towards it this year. I know the hospital has been at the table with looking at potential support for this project. I know there are a couple of community individuals that are providing support. Adam's board is providing some support primarily through mental health staff members. And then hopefully the city and county, and then I know the community foundation is also looking at it. They have not made a solid financial commitment at this time just because of their board schedule.
If I may add to this, yeah. Speaking of the finances, yes, the community foundation, I'm going in front of their board committee on the 9th. They have a meeting. They're very interested in the project. They're very interested in supporting the project. Like I said, there's more need for it now during this pandemic, and I think a lot of entities are looking to help. So the city contribution or the city support will be part of many partners, which make this a great project. I just want to add one more thing to the finance. From the 20,000 or so mobiles that we research all over the United States, you know, for every dollar spent on the mobile or invested in the mobile, there was a return of $12 in healthcare cost savings. That's the data. That's the research we've done on the 20,000 that are existing. So it's a good investment in general. That's what we've seen everywhere else. But we're looking forward to keep our KPIs to show that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Niemeyer.
I ran into a little bit of negative comments on this. I think we are all running for re-election. We've probably had some petitions signed, and nobody has heard anything negative. I have a hard time spending an extra $150,000 of taxpayer money. We're already close to $350,000 for the health department, and some people ask me, what do I get out of it? Probably the same people voted the school tax down because they looked at their tax card they got in the mail and could not believe how much they gave in school tax. So I really think all councilmen need to look at this hard, see what we want to do with taxpayers' money.
Mr. Slough.
Does the driver, do they need to have specialized skills? And if they do, would the city help them attain their goals in order to drive the bus?
It is just like an RV. So it is an RV, so the same credentials you would need, and I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head if there's any special requirements, but again, that would be the responsibility of public health to make sure that those licenses were obtained and appropriately managed. And I would, Councilman Niemeyer, I certainly agree. Anytime we're looking at funds or anything that comes before council should be scrutinized. That's certainly why we're here to answer questions. If there's specific information or data that you would like to see, please let me know and I'm happy to provide it. I'm sure Kareem would be happy to come to the next council meeting as well, again, to follow up on any questions that you may think of. Ultimately, I think what I would say is that the taxpayer dollars invested in this are going to pay dividends, and though you may not see it right away, as Kareem mentioned, as a community, one of the largest expenses we can see in the healthcare system is individuals going to the ER or urgent care for issues that should not necessarily be addressed there. And so anything we can do to help folks get pre-screening obviously is going to help their quality of life and their overall health and ability to work and invest in our community. But also it's going to provide a benefit from them not showing up in the ER when they start having a heart attack that could have been prevented if they had been pre-screened and gotten on the proper medication. And so I would argue that $150,000 to benefit the entire community is well worth it with the long-term benefit it's going to provide on pre-screenings, potential insurance benefits when we go and do screenings at businesses, and a number of other ways. But I do agree we should always be always scrutinize every dollar that we spend, and certainly that's why I'm here, that's why I'm asking what questions you have, and that's why I'm happy to provide any information on this topic.
It doesn't need a special driver license. This is no air brakes. I mean, part of the research we've done, if you need a special driver and if the vehicle will have air brakes or not, but it doesn't. Probably one of the nurses who are going to be on board will be able to drive the thing, or one of our staff. So we don't need a special driver.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Mr. Palmer.
How much money currently has been committed to the mobile health clinic?
Do you have that? I don't have
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. There's about $90,000 that is pretty much, well, actually 90 to 25,000. So probably close to $150,000 in the bank towards this project. And then probably another 100,000 verbally committed on top of then potential contributions from the city, community foundation, and potentially the county.
Mr. Hellman.
This is either for the mayor or for Mr. Baruti. Do we need the county's participation in order to make this successful?
I would say, from a community perspective, I would like to see the county at the table because this is a county-wide project, and I wouldn't want the city to be the main funder of it. And I think that they are interested in doing so, recognizing that the city is 75% of the county population, and so wanting to make sure that we're also committed to making it happen. Was that a political enough answer without committing people to things they haven't committed to?
That was very, very vague, and I appreciate that. No, I mean, we would like to see the county participate.
Yeah, so in short, the county discussed it today. They're having the township meeting again on Wednesday. I would expect that the following Tuesday they will have a little bit more in-depth conversations, and my expectation would be that at the next council meeting or the following council meeting we will have a little bit better indication of which direction the county is going and can act accordingly.
Mr. Slack.
The mayor answered my question.
Mr. Russell.
Two comments. One about the timing. I think that the genesis for this idea was started long prior to COVID being on the horizon. And the benefits of this had better extend long after the COVID disappears from our landscape, which can't come soon enough. And so whether this receives a second and third reading at their next meeting, or goes full through the readings, my time frame isn't the ability to, or the necessity to have this to do inoculations or vaccinations for COVID isn't high on my list as to why this should happen or this shouldn't happen. That to me is kind of icing on the cake. So that's just on a timing. I'm glad we did not try to do 3 readings tonight and we're having this conversation. The second comment is that this rings to me very similar to the Strick Center. And the Strick Center, as you know, is something that started by the brainchild of Chief Eberly and Safety Director Schmelzer, and it's to benefit police and fire, but it was a county-wide benefit. And talking to my friends who are volunteer firefighters, they were really excited for the Strick Center. They don't live in Findlay, they might work in Findlay, but they would see the benefit. To me, this is, and it's similar to the reasons why we did a combined health department way back when I first started on council, is to get this, we were better together, and thank God we don't have 2 health departments trying to get through COVID. And so in that respect, as I hear these things answered and think about it, I'm learning more and more favorable towards the concept of the mobile health center. It just seems in line with what the city has done with Strick, with our Findlay formula and cooperation, attacking these community type problems. So we know that community health doesn't just stop at the border of Findlay or vice versa. It is county and regional wide. And if this is a tool that helps us attack the problem, it most likely has my support. I'll still consider it more and listen to other folks about it. But to me, this was a very good conversation. I appreciate it, and it sounds like a good project. Thank you.
And yet, Ms. Mayor.
I don't have anything else on the mobile health unit. I just had a couple of other updates.
Yeah, I was going to ask, does anybody else have any other new business? Ms. Mayor.
All right, perfect. Well, I certainly echo the comment on the combined health department. Like, praise the Lord, hallelujah, that we have the county-wide health department. That has been very beneficial, so thank you to all that were involved in that. Just real quick, wanted to point out, especially if there's any public viewing, the Rainick property, that was the item that we had discussed last week in the executive session. We are working with the county to get the MOU and kind of property acquisition organized. Once we get your approval, that is obviously a critical piece of property to be able to move forward with the benching project, which I had a really good meeting on last week with Stan Tech and Steve Wilson, as well as Commissioner Bechtel, receiving an update on that. And so we'll probably have some great information in the next couple of months as we look at that timeline for design, as well as potential redevelopment of that area consistent with the flood mitigation regulations. To see that move forward is fantastic. So thank you for your action and continuing to support that legislation moving forward. The only other item I wanted to mention, and then I'll let you all go home, is 9975, as I think many of you saw, related to the press release that they put out with selecting the diverging diamond. I just want to clarify, because you do have legislation that is on your agenda for the $420,000 towards that project. The selection of that design allows us to move forward with continuing to get kind of everything in line to get additional outside funding. And as you may have seen, obviously there's the build grant that will go towards at the federal level. There's the track funding through the state, but the governor also announced yesterday, as part of his operations budget, an additional $200 million towards infrastructure, and so we will continue to follow up on that if that's potential funding for this project. So I just wanted to make sure it was clear that that really just shows that ODOT continues to be committed to this project and that the city and the county working collaboratively with them will really help us have to pay pennies on the dollars to get that major infrastructure updated in our community. So I just didn't want you to think that we were putting the cart before the horse with them announcing that. So I think we've already hit on everything else. So any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Any other new business?
No, I thought we were in old.
We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Old
Mr. Lobson.
Old business?
Oh, that was earlier, but we could go back to old business.
My apologies. Just a reminder that Appropriations Committee is on a week from tonight, 9 o'clock, or excuse me, on the 9th at 5 o'clock. Let's get that backwards.
Okay.
It is here in council chambers.
Any other old business, new business, unfinished business, monkey business?
Move to adjourn.
Hearing none. Move to adjourn by Mr. Russell, second by Mr. Schendeldecker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed?
You didn't ask for a vote. I was ready to jump in there.
I don't think you guys, either one of you, were using your microphones.